A young eagle once landed at a table full of crows. They mocked his silence, laughed at his stillness, and told him he'd never belong unless he squawked like them. So he tried, but in trying to fit in, he forgot how to soar. That's what happens when you fight for a seat at the wrong table. You lose your wings trying to earn a place that was never meant for your spirit. As the Stoics would echo, if it dims your flame, don't play their game. When respect is rare, don't pull up a chair. Fitting in isn't winning when the table's full of sinning. Chasing inclusion in the wrong places leads to 3 dangers. You betray your values to feel accepted. You tolerate disrespect disguised as connection. You exhaust your energy proving you belong. In this video, we'll explore 8 Stoic truths to remind you that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Inspired by Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, this is your call to rise above tables that shrink your soul. Hit like, subscribe, and comment, "I choose self-worth," if you're ready to reclaim your seat at the right table, your own. Number 1, you were not made to fit in. You were made to stand upright. Trying to fit in often means bending yourself out of shape. Like a tree trained to grow sideways just to match the hedges beside it. You may still appear orderly on the outside, but inside you're twisted and strained. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, reminded us that we were made to grow upright, to live truthfully and rightly, not to contort ourselves for shallow acceptance. The soul thrives in integrity, not imitation. You weren't made to disappear into crowds, but to carry yourself with silent dignity, even when misunderstood. The danger of trying to fit in, especially into environments that require you to abandon your conscience, is the slow corrosion of the self. You start saying yes when your gut says no. You nod along to mediocrity, gossip, or cruelty just to avoid being the outsider. But each moment you do this, you chip away at your own center. What may start as harmless conformity turns into self-betrayal. Before you know it, you're not sure who you are without the approval of those who never saw your soul in the first place. Standing upright may come with discomfort, rejection, isolation, or silence, but it also carries the reward of inner peace. The Stoics believed it is better to walk alone in alignment than to compromise your virtue for applause. When you stop trying to belong to the wrong places, you create space to belong to yourself. And in that self-belonging, you start attracting what truly resonates. Let the crooked hedges stay where they are. You are the tree meant to reach the sky. Number 2, self-worth is internal, not granted by others. Self-worth, in the eyes of the Stoics, is not a trophy handed out by others. It is a steady flame kindled from within. Epictetus understood this deeply when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because genuine growth and virtue often look odd to a world obsessed with surface appearances. If your value depends on the shifting winds of public opinion, you will forever chase validation and live at the mercy of moods you don't control. One day you're praised, the next you're ignored, and your sense of self rises and falls like a leaf in the breeze. Imagine your worth as a lighthouse on a rocky coast. It does not move for ships, storms, or approval. It simply stands, guiding whoever has the eyes to see. But when you start seeking external validation, you abandon your post. You become a ship drifting wherever others steer you, toward approval, applause, or inclusion. The danger in this is slow spiritual erosion. You begin to shapeshift into what others want, not who you are. Over time, the true self, the one rooted in values, dignity, and reason, is replaced by a performance. What begins as compromise ends as self-forgetting. The Stoic answer is radical self-ownership. True peace comes not from being invited to the table, but from knowing you never had to beg for a seat in the first place. If a space requires you to betray your conscience to be accepted, it's a false belonging. Let others misunderstand you. Let them call you strange. That clarity is your gift. It reveals where your soul is not meant to settle. When self-worth comes from within, rejection doesn't scar. It sharpens your sense of direction. You realize that being excluded from the wrong places is protection, not punishment. And in that, you walk lighter, freer, and far more whole. Number 3, inclusion isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a trap. Inclusion, while often dressed as a reward, can sometimes be a beautifully wrapped burden. The Stoics remind us that not every open door leads to freedom. Some lead straight into cages. Seneca's wisdom, associate with people who are likely to improve you, is a call to discernment. It challenges the assumption that acceptance is always an advantage. Some tables only make room for you so they can reshape you. You're not welcomed for your essence, but for your ability to blend in, remain silent, or serve someone else's narrative. It may feel like elevation, but if it costs your authenticity, it's a fall in disguise. Think of a bird that finally gets invited into a golden cage. From the outside, it looks like privilege. Shiny bars, a view, maybe even praise. But inside, the bird can't fly. Its wings are clipped for comfort. This is what happens when you force yourself into circles that don't honor your integrity. You laugh at jokes that offend your values. You downplay your dreams to make others feel superior. You remain passive in the face of subtle disrespect, because leaving might mean solitude. But the cost of staying is steep. Your light dims, your voice weakens, and your soul becomes domesticated. The danger of inclusion without alignment is that it slowly conditions you to abandon yourself. Over time, you forget what it feels like to be free, to speak plainly, to act with purpose. You confuse attention for love and proximity for belonging. Stoicism urges you to pause and examine. Does this space require my distortion? If so, then inclusion is not a gift. It's a trap. True belonging never demands betrayal. The moment you must shrink to fit in is the moment you've outgrown the room. And when you recognize that, you give yourself permission to walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, because no seat is worth trading your soul. Number 4, rejection is often divine redirection. Rejection, though painful, is often one of life's most honest teachers. From the Stoic lens, it's not a punishment, it's a form of clarity. When a door closes, the wise don't pound on it in desperation. They pause, reflect, and ask, what am I being spared from? Marcus Aurelius wrote, look within. Within is the fountain of good. This reminder is key. When something or someone turns you away, it doesn't diminish your worth. It redirects your focus inward, toward what is within your control, your virtue, your path, your peace. Think of a river that encounters a fallen tree in its path. It doesn't fight the obstacle, it flows around it, finds a new course, and continues forward. Rejection is that tree. If you try to bulldoze through it, you exhaust yourself. But if you adjust your course, you may find calmer waters and clearer direction. Forcing your way into places that resist your presence often leads to self-compromise, distorted behavior, suppressed values, and spiritual exhaustion. What begins as ambition quickly turns into erosion. The soul starts to bend unnaturally just to belong, and over time, you no longer recognize the person you've become. The danger of resisting rejection is that you remain fixated on external validation. You miss the higher wisdom hidden in the no. You chase tables that were never meant to nourish you. You internalize the rejection as failure, instead of interpreting it as alignment. But Stoicism invites a shift in perception. Rejection is redirection, away from distortion and toward authenticity. The cost of demanding entry into spaces that dishonor you is far greater than the sting of being turned away. Instead, choose to trust that when something closes, it simply means your soul is being protected or rerouted to something more aligned. In that trust, you'll find your strength. In that pause, your path. Number 5, you can't be free while seeking their approval. Approval is a subtle addiction, one that enslaves even the strongest minds if left unchecked. Epictetus put it plainly, if you wish to be free, then wish nothing that depends on others. When your sense of worth hinges on whether others accept you, you hand over the keys to your peace. You may believe you're being strategic, networking, staying likable, staying safe, but you're quietly building a cage, bar by bar. Every nod of approval becomes a temporary high, and every silence, a withdrawal. This dependency makes you easy to manipulate and quick to betray your own voice just to stay liked. Imagine a bird sitting in a cage with the door wide open. It doesn't fly away because it's been conditioned to believe the food it needs can only be delivered by its keeper. That bird is not free, it's just accommodated. Seeking approval is much the same. The moment you alter your behavior for applause or acceptance, you lose altitude. You stop flying according to your own wind. And even if the applause comes, it comes with conditions. Stay this way, say what we like. Don't upset us. Over time, you lose your shape and your soul becomes a performance. The danger of approval seeking is that it breeds self-erasure. It makes you fragile, dependent on applause, vulnerable to criticism, and lost without guidance. You become unable to hear your own intuition because the noise of others drowns it out. And even worse, approval is fleeting. What wins favor today may invite ridicule tomorrow. Stoicism offers a path back to inner sovereignty. Choose to value truth over trend, self-respect over popularity, and integrity over inclusion. The consequence of not doing so is a life spent in quiet captivity, forever chasing permission to exist. But once you stop seeking approval and start choosing freedom, the world's opinions lose their grip, and you rise, rooted, unshaken, and free. Number 6, true belonging comes where you're free to be whole. True belonging doesn't demand that you shrink, filter, or fracture yourself to fit in. It invites your full presence. The Stoics spoke of living in accordance with nature, which includes honoring your moral instincts and deeper truth. Belonging, in the Stoic sense, isn't about proximity to others. It's about internal congruence. When you're in an environment that lets you live truthfully, kindly, and justly, you don't feel the pressure to edit yourself. You feel at ease. Marcus Aurelius reminded us to be simple, good, pure, serious, unpretentious. And these qualities can't thrive in places where you're constantly performing for approval. Think of a plant in the wrong soil. You can water it, give it sunlight, and still it struggles. Why? Because the roots know it doesn't belong there. But place it in the right soil and growth happens naturally. Humans are no different. If you're constantly drained, second-guessing your instincts, or hiding parts of yourself just to belong, you're not in the right ecosystem. That's not real connection. It's spiritual suffocation. You might look accepted on the surface, but deep down, you're withering. Authentic belonging should nourish, not deplete. The danger of staying in misaligned spaces is that over time, you forget who you really are. You normalize self-betrayal. You become fluent in dishonesty, telling people what they want to hear, smiling through discomfort, and silencing your values to avoid friction. But the consequence is spiritual exile. You are everywhere except home within yourself. That's why Stoicism encourages discernment, not just in action, but in association. Seek out environments, be it a friendship, a workplace, or a relationship, where you can breathe freely, speak truthfully, and be seen wholly. Because any place that demands your mass does not deserve your soul. Number 7, walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom. We've been taught to glorify endurance at all costs, to keep pushing, keep proving, keep staying. But the Stoics saw through that illusion. To them, wisdom wasn't about clinging to every situation. It was about knowing when a thing no longer aligned with your values. Seneca's words, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage," echo the quiet bravery it takes to walk away, not in bitterness, but in clarity. To leave the wrong table where you're barely tolerated, constantly drained, or subtly disrespected is not weakness, it's self-honoring. Walking away is an act of remembering your own worth when others have forgotten it. Imagine a bird trapped in a cage with its door wide open. It doesn't need force to leave, just the realization that freedom is one step away. Many people stay in cages with no locks, jobs that erode their integrity, relationships that belittle their spirit, or social groups that demand conformity over truth. They think staying proves loyalty or strength, but often it only proves fear. The real strength lies in having the discernment to say, "This doesn't serve my growth," and the courage to rise from that seat. Because every time you walk away from what insults your soul, you walk toward what uplifts it. The danger of staying too long at the wrong table is subtle but devastating. You begin to normalize disrespect. You start doubting your instincts. You trade your voice for temporary inclusion and slowly forget what peace even feels like. Over time, this self-abandonment corrodes confidence. It's not the rejection that wounds, it's your own silence in the face of it. But when you walk away, even if you walk alone, you signal to yourself that your well-being matters. And that's how self-trust is built, not in staying loyal to pain, but in being loyal to your values. Let the world think it's weakness. The Stoic knows walking away is often the strongest move on the board. Number 8, build your own table and invite those who align with truth. If the right table doesn't exist, then build one where truth is the foundation and integrity is the invitation. That's the Stoic approach, not to chase seats at corrupted tables, but to live with such inner clarity that you become the example. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The Stoic doesn't beg for space in dishonest circles. He creates his own, even if that space begins in solitude. To build your own table is to choose alignment over approval, substance over status. Imagine a lighthouse on a stormy coast. It doesn't move to find calmer waters or brighter skies. It stays rooted, casting light for those who are meant to see it. That's your role. When you build your own table, you're not isolating yourself. You're establishing a space where clarity, virtue, and truth can gather. You may not attract crowds, but you will attract kindred spirits. Those who sit beside you will not be drawn by performance or pretense, but by resonance. You'll recognize each other not by words, but by the integrity you share. The danger in waiting to be included in broken systems is that you may forget your own voice while trying to be heard. You may begin to conform, dilute your values, or shrink to fit molds that were never made for you. The consequence, a life lived in quiet resignation. But when you build your own table, even if it's small and silent at first, you reclaim sovereignty. You create a space where your soul breathes freely. Over time, it becomes a sanctuary, not just for yourself, but for others who've been wandering, searching, and starving for truth. The Stoic path isn't about fitting in. It's about standing out through virtue and letting that virtue build the world you want to live in. Conclusion: you were not born to beg. You were not created to fight endlessly for inclusion in places that cannot see you. You were made to embody truth, stand in virtue, and protect your peace. The Stoic path is not about rejection for its own sake. It's about discernment. It's about knowing that just because a table exists doesn't mean it deserves your presence. Stop shrinking to be accepted. Stop fighting for crumbs of validation. Stop sacrificing your soul to sit with those who wouldn't kneel to pick it up when it's wounded. Instead, rise. Walk away from the wrong rooms. Build new ones. And surround yourself with those who choose you not because you beg for it, but because your soul calls to theirs. That's not pride. That's philosophical clarity. That's Stoic self-worth. Like, subscribe and comment. Have you ever outgrown a room you once begged to be in? Let's talk about it stoically. Thank you for watching.